year in Hearthstone. This has been his breakout year. He went from a relative nobody in the scene to winning DreamHack Atlanta, getting second at DreamHack Denver, and being the America's Winter Champion. And here we go, getting into match number 1, JDRenegade versus DrJikininki. It is going to be Mage taking on Rogue, and it looks to be that aggressive Secret Mage variant, and likely a Tempo Rogue here for Dr. J. So what do you make of this matchup, Sayan? At first glance, for me, it seems like the Mage should be slightly favored because the Rogue has no counter to all of that burn damage.
Yeah, absolutely. Rogue is very short on taunts and practically has no life gain in its resource pool. The only way it could possibly stall out a turn is maybe like an ice block or a counter spell off a Swashbuckler, something that they can pull from the Mage's arsenal instead. So at this point, JDRenegade with Lackey and Kirin Tor in hand is really looking to find the first secret from his deck just so he can gain some tempo out here. But overall, Lackey is such a strong card in the matchup because even if he doesn't find it now, he does have something like Lackey into Valet after he finds a secret off of the Arcane Intellect. So I definitely like JDRenegade going here, going for the card draw instead.
And the Lackeys did end up finding their way into this list because the inclusion of Alaneth, if you are able to land that legendary weapon, you're drawing 3 cards at the end of every turn, and then suddenly you're at risk of overdrawing. So the Mage needs to be able to dump a lot of cards very quickly if it gets to that point in the later stages of the game, and Cabal Lackey certainly helps facilitate that a little bit.
Absolutely, and Renegade here kind of off to a slow start. Dr. J getting a pretty solid opening hand for the Rogue side. Overall, the Mage has kind of lost a good window to start pushing that early damage. And at this point, Tar Creeper comes out, and you've got a lot to deal with if you want to push any of the minion damage, which you definitely need to make it through in this matchup.
You really want that Mana Worm Arcanologist opening start. That's where the Mage deck really is at its most powerful because you have so much burn damage in the deck, but you do need to get in some of that early chip as well. Otherwise, the Tempo Rogue is going to amount so much pressure on board that they may just be able to run you over. We saw Burn Mage versus Zoo yesterday, and the Burn Mage was 1 turn off from being able to kill the Zoo Warlock, and the Warlock just had too much pressure, popped the block, was able to win the next turn.
Yep, absolutely. I think that overall the aggro matchups for Burn Mage become a little more intricate. Like, Burn Mage has a very simple plan against control. You put out as many minions as you can, wait till you hit Alunet, and you go straight to the face. But against aggro, you do have to respect their potential to burn you out as well.
Maybe give a little bit of consideration to some of the stronger minions on the board. Use a Medivh's Valet to clear off a South Sea Captain, for instance, instead of just throwing 3 damage to face. So JDRenegade here going to have to try and navigate that fine line between respecting the board too much and playing too defensively and being too aggressive and not giving it the consideration it deserves.
Yeah, and Dr. J here does have a pretty solid turn. He can trade out the board, get the Quarter Creeper online, and play the Elven Minstrel at this point, drawing him a few additional resources from his deck as well. I'd really like to see him take this turn just to, get a few more resources in the hand, because at this point, yeah, the Leroy's pretty dead. The Frostlich Jaina probably not going to be that impactful in the game, so he's really trying to, refill the hand at this point.
Yeah.
And this is a pretty good turn just to get the Minstrel online and get a few more resources.
If we do get into the very late turns, maybe Frostlich Jaina will help Dr. J get out of range of a lot of burn, but we're going to call that Plan B for now.
And what a powerful turn this is. You to draw 2 cards, put out a 5/5 and a 3/2, complete board control at this point, and still JDRenegade yet to kind of, stop the mounting pressure from Rogue.
He does
have an awkward mana total for JDRenegade.
Yeah, it is. He would have liked to have 6 this turn for sure.
Yeah, overall, I mean, he's drawn all of these ways to cheat out the secrets, but overall, he's only gotten 1 counterspell, 1 ice block up. And ice block is probably the card you really didn't want to see as a secret for so early in the game. You wanted something like Explosive Runes to maybe be a little more impactful.
Yeah, Explosive Runes is definitely one of the better inclusions from Kobolds and Catacombs into this deck. It helps you clear up some of the early minions from the Rogue and gets in that valuable chip damage over the course of the game, which JDRenegade has been lacking a little bit. Now look at all of the pressure that Dr. J has on board, and he's still sitting at a healthy 24 life. JDRenegade has nowhere near that amount of damage.
Yeah, and at this point, even, second ice block coming for JDRenegade, so maybe he has a longer game plan for this deck. 2 Ice Blocks means naturally you're probably running a Pyroblast on your list as well, kind of playing a much more defensive game plan.
Okay, and he does seem to be taking the time to go ahead and clear up the board, try and extend his game that much longer with the addition of the Ice Blocks. Try to find that Aleneth, try to find the necessary resources. Dr. J just going to need to keep mounting as much pressure as he possibly can and try to cut that clock down even further.
Yeah, Dr. J definitely has an awkward hand. It looks like we're just going to see a 5-mana Spider Tank come out at this point. It's not the best, but at this point, you have to understand that the Mage doesn't have that many threats, so you're not going to be missing the Vile Spine Battle Cry or combo effect.
We've already seen one Cabal Crystal Runner. It means there's only one more in the deck. Maybe there's some Firelands drops that you'd like to kill with that Vile Spine, but getting the body on board is just more valuable.
A little bit earlier, the Pyroblast is picked up, so JDRenegade at this point has 2 turns to stall with the Ice Blocks, and maybe a little bit of time to assemble the rest of this burn damage here. A Fireball would do it over the next few turns.
Yeah. With the addition of a couple of hero powers weaved in there, it's possible it's going to be close for sure, and it's going to have to end with that 10-mana Pyroblast post-second block pop from Dr. J, but JDRenegade might be able to get the job done here.
Going into, I believe, 8 mana for Renegade next turn, he simply doesn't have enough time getting the block pop this turn to make it through to the Ice Block, the Fireball, the Ping, and the Pyroblast. He would just be 1 turn too short.
It would need to be a Primordial Glyph into some form of stall for him. And then, even then, though, DrJikininki has the Frostlich Jaina in hand, which will give him 5 immediate armor and put a Water Elemental on board that he can then use for lifesteal.
Yeah, and Dr. J a little bit frustrated. The sequencing there could have been a little bit better, so you could get the Creeper a little bit cheaper there. But in this case, probably won't be much of a factor.
So Dr. J going to go ahead and pop that second block here.
Yeah, and how do you feel about this specific kind of build that Renegade has brought? 2 Ice Blocks, Pyroblast, it goes super late.
It does.
And against some of these aggro decks, if you don't hit the early curve, you're going to struggle finding that chip damage and even making it to Pyroblast on time.
I did actually try out a build of this deck very similar. I think I probably snagged it from Orange somewhere along the way early on in the Kobolds and Catacombs meta. And the Pyroblast is a nice finisher. It's a nice inclusion, but
well played.
This deck just isn't fine-tuned to go long. That's not the overall game plan. You want to burn them out as fast as you possibly can, and sometimes you just end up fatiguing yourself with Aleneth if you're going for that longer game plan. It's just a bit messy, and unfortunately for JDRenegade, it didn't work out the way he had planned. So DrJikininki is going to take game number 1, and if JDRenegade's going to win this set, that means we are going to be seeing that. So a bit of a tough break for him in game number 1, and game 2 is going to be a Priest Mirror, but it's looking like 2 very different kinds of priests. For JDRenegade, we've got that big spell priest with the addition of some dragons, and for Dr. J, this is Raza Priest.
Yeah, I think this is kind of the curveball that might be thrown by some of the amateurs. Without the deck list being open, you could very well go into your mulligan thinking, hey, we're going to be playing a Raza Priest Mirror. But instead, Renegade puts out Spiteful Summoner on turn 6, and that is a lot to deal with for the mage, or for the priest.
Spiteful Summoner is one of the highest impact cards that any deck can play right now. It's a 6-mana 4/4 Battlecry. Reveal a spell in your deck and summon a minion onto the board with that same mana cost. So this Priest deck is only playing 2 copies of Free from Amber and 2 copies of Mind Control, very likely. And unfortunately, both of those Mind Controls are in the hand right now. You're wanting to use that Spiteful Summoner to summon powerful 10-mana cost minions. We also saw a Grand Archivist in the mulligan, which at the end of the turn plays a spell from your deck. And you would like to use that with the Mind Control at some point. So really unfortunate that JDRenegade is off to such a heavy start.
Absolutely. While Spiteful Summoner is a powerful card, I mean, you do have to run essentially 4 patches in your deck. And at this point, you have drawn 2. And when you run 4 copies of such kind of low-tempo cards, naturally, you're going to end up drawing 1 or 2 throughout the game. And for Renegade, he doesn't hit the curve. He's kind of missing out on the early game. And at this point, Mind Control, not so good against a deck that's focused more or less on burning you out once they assemble their combo.
Yeah, that's a great point. It can be really, really effective against Control Warlock, for instance. If you can steal your opponent's Void Lords with Mind Control, then all of their resummons are suddenly that much weaker, then suddenly you have that huge tempo gain. But in this matchup where Raza Priest isn't looking to put large minions on the board, they're just going to be dead draws anyway, if you can't even use them to facilitate the Spiteful Summoner.
Yeah, and Renegade here with Spellbreaker off the top is going to get rid of the pesty Radiant Elemental, stopping Dr. J's tempo throughout the next few turns.
So maybe a little bit of upside for JDRenegade's plan is that he is playing a dragon-based deck, which means that Dragon Fire Potion for DrJikininki will be that much weaker. And in general, the dragon minions for Dragon Priest are pretty resilient. They're pretty sticky, they've got high health totals, they're going to be able to deal a good amount of damage over the course of a couple turns if JDRenegade can stick some of them on the board. So he does have a strong mid-game plan with this dragon archetype. It's just a matter of, is he going to be bogged down by, essentially, like you said, the 4 patches that he's running?
Yeah, I mean, overall, I feel like this is a favored matchup for the Spiteful Priest. When you have so much tempo on your side, it's hard for the Raza Priest to clear everything and still take time off to draw the cards that they need to fulfill their own game plan. So overall, Dr. J would need something like a Psychic Scream on top of maybe a Dragonfire and Anduin to kind of catch up here, because JDRenegade, for his side, it doesn't look like the pressure is stopping anytime soon. Dr. J here maybe considering which of his resources to use. The Cobalt Scalebane definitely makes the potion a little more awkward, maybe considering whether or not it's a worthy death target, knowing that there's a potential Spiteful Summoner coming out the following turn. This death might be something that Dr. J values very highly.
Yeah, you have to be very, very wary of that. Dr. J only, of course, has a single copy of each card in his deck, as this is a Highlander build of Priest. So he needs to be very careful with his resources here.
Then Dr. J taking a fairly reactionary step here, opting to get rid of the 7-3 immediately this turn. One of the things that the Spiteful Summoner Priest is pretty bad at is, filling out the burn damage. Yes, their deck has a lot of tempo, but once you get them off a board, you don't have to play around very much.
Yeah.
It's just Bone Marrow for an additional 4. Overall, the life total that you're at and the amount of damage on the board is basically all you have to play around.
All right, so the first big boy on the board is going to be Gruul off of that Free from Amber. And when Spiteful Summoner activates its battle cry, it does not actually use the card in the deck, whereas Grand Archivist does. So there's that little bit of difference there. But it is good for Dr. J that he went ahead and saved that Shadow Word Death, because this Gruul is going to be a much more threatening target now than the Cobalt Scalebane.
And JDRenegade traded off into the Kazakus instead of the Radiant Elemental. I would have liked to see him respect Radiant a little bit more, because going into turn 6, Radiant Elemental does threaten the Psychic Scream coming out a turn earlier.
Yeah, that's a good point. Give more respect, I would say, to the ability to play more spells in a single turn than you're normally able to, than just one more attack on a minion.
Yeah, absolutely. And here Dr. J still faced with the board state that is outside of Psychic Scream, very hard for the Priest to answer.
Yeah, he's in a very tough position right now. Shadow Word Death is pretty much necessary this turn, but doesn't have access to a full clear.
And another patch is drawn for Renegade, but at this point, Free from Amber is more or less a welcome draw. Just getting an extra threat out on turn 8 is not too bad. Perhaps he's only running these 3 copies, like 2 Mind Controls, 1 Amber, and that would leave something like Grand Archivist more or less dead in his hand.
Well, for his sake, I would hope he's got 2 copies of Free from Amber in the deck.
It's one of those things that I think players are kind of catching on to. Running patches is pretty bad in your deck, and to have 3 or even 4 of them does often lead to kind of worse draws throughout the game.
And this is a deck that does kind of require a strong curve throughout. You are playing that mid-rangey game plan, and you just have those power spikes from the Spiteful Summoner and the Grand Archivist, but you still want to be going, Fairy Dragon on 2, Cleric on 1 if you can. You've probably got Cabal Talon Priest somewhere in there. It is a deck that heavily relies on curving out, but Dr. J is just going to drop the Prophet Velen on the board to contest these minions. Do you like this play?
Something that you were alluding to earlier, Core, is that the Dragonfire potion that Dr. J's picked up doesn't do a whole lot in this matchup, so he's kind of forced into a corner here where he has to use his minions to kind of contest. Hopefully it does enough here.
And I mean, it makes sense because Dr. J, well, his overall game plan for his deck is to find Raza Anduin and then do upwards of 32 damage in one turn with Prophet Velen. He hasn't found either Raza or Anduin. And so he's just gone ahead and abandoned that game plan in favor of just trying to remove all of the minions that JDRenegade has, neutralize all of these threats, and then there's really no way that Dr. J can die because JDRenegade only has minion pressure to win this game.
Yeah, and I thought I saw JDRenegade at 8 mana last turn. He didn't end up playing free from Amber. He kind of took the turn off to see what's inside that Nether Spite. Unfortunately, it ended up just pulling out an Alexstrasza, so that's not quite what Renegade wanted here. A higher heavy tempo turn would have been nice, so he could continue pressuring Dr. J with his minions.
Yeah, he would have really liked a Draconid Operative. A Ysera would have been really nice, but there you go.
These free from Amber pulls and Spiteful Summoners have been pretty good thus far. Gruul, Ysera, all these legendaries, a little bonus effect on the side, not bad.
It seems like whenever I play this deck specifically, my Spiteful Summoner pulls Mind Control, and I'm like, oh, this is so great. I'm going to get like Deathwing, and then I get Yogg-Saron every single freaking time, or Cthulhu. And I'm like, oh yeah, these are great, but they're not.
Yeah, especially in a Priest Mirror, no minion is more welcome than Ysera. At this point, Dr. J is still at a very healthy life total. He does have time to find something like Psychic Scream to maybe relieve the board pressure and come back, but, he hasn't hit a lot of card draw this game. And generally, he'd be a few cards deeper, but the only thing that he's really drawn with is the Xactus Potion.
Yeah, that's a good point. We haven't seen Novice Engineer, we haven't seen Acolyte of Pain. It's been a pretty cycle-light game for Dr. J thus far, and that means he's just working with less resources overall. If he can't find that Psychic Scream, if he can't find, oh goodness, Shadow Reaper Anduin doesn't get Ysera off the board, and I don't think he's running Pint-Sized Shadowward Horror.
Yeah, and I think Dr. J will be very relieved to see that the Grand Archivist won't pull another thing out of the deck, giving Dr. J a very strong read that the 3 or maybe 2 remaining big spells are just in his hand already.
There's so much pressure on board right now for JDRenegade. Is there anything that Dr. J can even do here to clear up? Dragonfire only gets rid of the Bone Mare.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall it's a weird read to see, but if the Grand Archivist were to pull Mind Control, he wouldn't have made the trade. So overall, that it has to be in the hand still. Otherwise, Renegade would have just gone face with the Archivist instead.
All right, well, Dr. J, this is probably the best Dragonfire potion he's going to get, he thinks, and the value for JDRenegade just keeps piling up. He's got so many options. He can Alexstrasza and just go 12 to face right now, set Dr. J down to 3. He can free from Amber and put another big body on board, or he can Draconid Operative and try to find some utility, maybe, that could... Well, it probably actually wouldn't do much at all. He's just going to win from here.
Yeah, and I think Renegade's quite quick to pull the trigger here as well. You tested for Anduin last turn. He doesn't have Psychic Scream. So overall, committing to the board is fine outside of a top deck situation.
Well, Dr. J can play Blood Mage Thalnos, Shadow Word Paint it, pick up Psychic Scream, and then not have enough mana to play it. So I think that's probably it.
Yeah, there don't seem to be anything else on Dr. J's side. Kind of an unfortunate draw. Not a lot of card draw hit on the Priest side, and you do have to kind of navigate that situation. I mean, it's unfortunate for Dr. J tackling that in a different way themselves. Renegade, of course, playing a different variant Priest, and I guess Dr. J has some plans again to beat his Priest as well.
All right, so now JDRenegade will be on the Rogue, and Dr. J on the Control Warlock. We've seen a couple different variants of this Control Warlock, but it does look like he's going with the Gnome Feratu option.
Gnome Feratu, definitely a very interesting card. In Fatigue matchups, very, very powerful, getting your opponent one card closer to Fatigue, burning that card essentially. But in tempo matchups like this, it's practically the same as playing a River Crocolisk. Not as impactful.
Not quite as beastly. But he's getting a Swashbuckler out of contention, not so bad. And with the Stonehill defenders, and I believe we saw a Dirty Rat in the mulligan, this is just going to be a full control variant for Dr. J. So very good against aggressive decks.
And Dirty Rat in this meta has gotten kind of a little bit worse because a lot of aggressive decks are keeping quarter creepers. So despite Dirty Rat usually pulling out like a 1 or 2 drop, you have a big risk of pulling out their 5/5 for free. So Renegade picking up something else to play on curve. A very welcome draw on his side. South Sea Captain backstab allows him to clear up this board and just kind of take the rest of this damage, if he would like, to Dr. J. Deciding maybe to trade with Noferatu. Overall, I think you're going into Hellfire turn. It's kind of just damage missed from Renegade side.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. And while this isn't a perfectly clean defile for Dr. J, JDRenegade does know that Dr. J's deck has so much removal, has so much life gain, and for JDRenegade to really win this, he's going to need to be very aggressive. He doesn't want to give Dr. J enough time and enough leeway to life tap repeatedly and to find all of that removal. So you do need to be, maybe even more aggressive than the Tempo Rogue usually is in this matchup. And then, of course, you're banking on the Spellbreaker tech in the deck to get a lot of work done against Voidlord.
Yeah, and Renegade here deciding, the clear isn't too bad because he does have 2 quarter creepers in the hand at the moment. That's a lot of refill coming out. And when they get so cheap, being at 0 cost, it even allows him to combo things like Alpha Minstrel if that would have come off the top as well.
We go a single turn with a Corridor Creeper and a Bone Mare if JDRenegade wants it, but very hard to deny 2 0-mana 5/5s on the same turn. And Dr. J has the Possessed Lackey with Dark Pact on the other side, so assuming he doesn't pick up the second Voidlord off the top of the deck here, then he should be able to pull one out right here.
Yeah, and absolutely. This is a great stabilizing point for the controller lot. It doesn't really matter how bad the early game gets. One Voidlord generally takes care of that pretty swiftly.
Well, but here JDRenegade does pick up a way to get rid of the initial 9 health worth of taunt, and then Corridor Creepers can start going through the Voidwalkers. So it's a turn of no damage and not a lot of development for JDRenegade, but now Dr. J doesn't have a lot to react to this board with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Rogue is one of the better aggro decks that kind of deals with Voidlord in an efficient way. Just having Biospine Slayer, some way to kind of get through that, it doesn't cost you too much in terms of your current board state is very nice for the Rogue.
Yeah, you have the Spellbreaker options, the Vilespine options, whereas against another aggressive deck, say Aggro Paladin, for instance, it does seem like once you're able to cheat out that Voidlord, the only thing that they have to counter it is Sunkeeper Tarim. Other than that, game's pretty much over at that point. This is very much so a different story.
I like Dr. J's play here. Playing out the Dirty Rats instead of going for the Rin, which would have filled out his mana curve. He knows that overall his hand is pretty weak, and he needs some way to combat the board state as it is right now. Trying to find Twisting Nethers or something like that. Just drawing closer to your outs. Definitely has a play on his side.
Shadow Step pickup's actually really, really nice for JDRenegade. He can Shadow Step that Bone Mare back and play it again and get a decent amount of damage through to face this turn. Just keep putting on as much pressure as possible and hope that Dr. J doesn't have Twisting Nether in hand.
Yeah, I think Renegade understands that he's kind of all in at this point. His board state has been developed so far that holding one Bone Mare doesn't do a whole lot. Overall, he's just saying, if you have Nethers, I'm out here anyway.
He just doesn't have the option to play around it, and Dr. J doesn't have it. What can he pick up?
With 24 damage on the board, it's kind of hard for Dr. J to stabilize. He needs to deal with at least one of these threats and still have enough mana to Dark Pact his own Cobalt Librarian. So in order to do that, you need 4 mana for the Spellstone, hopefully.
Yep.
That could get rid of at least 5 damage here. And then Dark Pact, Mortal Coil, and Lackey. So maybe this turn he isn't even able to really fit in a life tap. So I would start with Lackey here. If we don't find it, we go with the Mortal Coil, and at that point, we probably end up Dark Pacting our own guy anyway. It's a way to kind of still have a shot in this game, find the Spellstone this turn, Nethers the following turn, and kind of go from there. Stonehold Defender can help a little bit too.
You could go with play the Rin and Dark Pact. The Librarian puts you at 22, and then there's 15, 16 likely getting through this turn. Yeah, that looks like that's what Dr. J is going to do. It does look like it's enough to keep him alive for now, assuming there's no Spellbreaker off the top, and there is.
A welcome draw for Renegade, but overall, it really just came down to that Nether's turn, whether or not Dr. J had it on turn 8. Completely swinging the game there. I believe Dr. J is probably running 2 copies of Twisting Nethers in his control.
Yeah, I would think so. It's a bit unfortunate. He just didn't have the reactive resources that you need in this matchup. No Defiles. He did have the one Hellfire, but with that one Void Lord in hand, clogging it up for a little bit. And Rin, obviously, not being very useful in that matchup whatsoever. It just wasn't what Dr. J was looking for there. And he's...
So that you can't really fight Rogue on board as well because of things like Vilespine Slayer. So you're always put into an awkward situation where Rogue is definitively the aggressor, and you're forced to clear after clear after clear.
Well, this deck does do an excellent job of playing defensively, and that's what Dr. J is going to try to do this time around. The Warlock up against the Secret Mage is really nice because of the multiple copies of the Lesser Amethyst Spellstone, because of the Dark Pacts. The amount of life gain for this Warlock is pretty high, so he should be able to navigate the early game, keep JDRenegade off of the board, try to cut down on the early chip damage from the minions, and then at that point, keep yourself at a healthy life total, and Dr. J should be able to take this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Burn Mage is a deck that lives and dies by the Mana Worm. How early you draw it, how early of an impact that Mana Worm gets. Because if you're drawing it later in the game, it's not going to amount to too much. But now, when the Mana Worm comes out before something like Hellfire, before the AoEs are quite ready, it can deal a lot of damage here.
That Fireball off the top is not what Dr. J wanted to see. This is the way that JDRenegade would have liked this mage deck to operate in game number 1 up against Dr. J's Rogue. And Dr. J just can't set up a Defile clear here.
Yeah, and at this point, I'm not sure if tapping is the way to go. It's one of those things where if I feel like I have a good enough hand as Warlock, I often won't tap against Burn Mage because I don't know if I have the healing available or the time to heal out of range. But with this hand, Faceless, Lackey, N'Zoth, it becomes a bit of a struggle. You don't have the right cards, so you are forced into a situation where you still have to tap despite the amount of mounting pressure coming out.
Yeah, this is definitely a matchup where you can play as defensively as possible and you just win. You don't have to kill your opponent, you just need to not die. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I like the setup from Dr. J. It doesn't deal as much damage as if it were to play the other way around, but it does get him another draw, which is something he's recognizing here, is that the draw is more important than anything else at the moment.
And he didn't have any way to set up that perfect Defile clear in hand, even with the Mortal Coil, so this is just looking for outs, I guess. Making the best of a bad hand.
Yeah, and overall, something you do have to be mindful in the matchup of is when you play the explosive runes, because the Control Warlock, oftentimes, that can kind of just lead to them getting a free Lackey, pulling out the Void Lord, and that kind of puts you into a bad position at that point.
JDRenegade picking up another Ice Block off of Primordial Glyph. We know he already has 2 natural copies of Ice Block in the deck, so now he's going to have quite a bit of stall in the late game to try to extend this if Dr. J does manage to stabilize, does manage to bring his life total back up to a healthy spot. And the thing, though, is JDRenegade, while he does have, all of this time...
Hold Ice Block. We got to cover up the misplay. The Mana Worm wasn't buffed yet. We already attacked. And it's actually, there's some merit to it. Because you get a cheaper Ice Block later on for 1 mana, so, if it does go super long, we have seen JDRenegade have the Pyroblast, so the 1 mana Ice Block can kind of help alleviate his mana usage later on when he's having those Aluneth turns as well.
That's true. That's true. And yeah, what I was saying is, well, he's got all this time, he now doesn't have the resources.
Yeah, and Dr. J not playing many in that turn, kind of hoping and banking on one of those secrets being explosive runes this time around. Actually gives Dr. J the free pull on Void Lord. It does deal 4 damage, but at this point, the minion pressure has been alleviated.
Someday I'll be just like you.
Another glyph is a welcome sight for JD. And I do want to ask, did you see him mulligan Alaneth in the mulligan? I vaguely remember seeing it.
I don't think I saw Elneth. Was that in his mulligan? The option to keep the 6-mana weapon?
I'm not positive.
It's definitely an interesting question to ask. It's a very powerful card, but what's the higher chance of winning here? Is it the Aluneth or is it the
The
mana
early
worm
minion
pull?
damage. Yeah. I don't know. Either way, he's definitely looking for it now. Alaneth at any point in time would be the best draw because at the end of the turn, JDRenegade would be able to pick up 3 cards, and then he could start to maybe even just close out this game over the course of 2 turns with the burn plan. But right now, he's floundering a little bit.
Yeah, and I think on Dr. J's side, it's just a matter of maybe finding a little bit more healing, but past that, I think we're just done tapping this game. We have N'Zoth, we have Void Lord. It's just a matter of whether or not Mage A has the Aluneth and B has the top decks ready for the burn damage. We're never really putting on enough pressure to make the Mage play any faster here.
Yeah. Ooh. Okay, so Dr. J still going to tap one more time, but he does pick up that Spellstone. With the Kobold Librarian, he's going to be able to heal for 5 when he plays that.
Yeah, I think Dr. J has kind of caught on at this point that the first secret is probably Ice Block that was played. Deciding to play around maybe Explosive Runes here, holding on to the Kobold Librarian at this point.
If he were to take 5, he'd go down to 9, then Frostbolt Fireball would be lethal. And there is that Explosive Runes for JDRenegade.
Yeah, now he's picked up another 6 health minion, something that kind of hedges against the Explosive Runes. Even Faceless comes down as a 3/6 Void Lord. Yeah, it'll die after the Explosive Runes, but you're alleviating the effect of the burn damage, which is pretty nice in the matchup.
Yeah, both of these cards are going to be rather inconsequential at this point. Dr. J really just has one thing on his mind, and that's his life total. He needs to stay out of range of all of the possible burn combinations from the Mage. JDRenegade has been holding that one card in hand for quite a while now, and Dr. J knows it is off of Primordial Glyph, so he's going to try and get a read on exactly what could this be. Could it be Pyroblast, for instance?
That's a scary thought. If it is Pyroblast, we haven't picked up any healing at this point outside of the Lesser Spellstone, but that's only going to heal 3. You're very weary of how much burn damage that the Mage can do, especially when you saw that JDRenegade in Game 1 actually put up 2 Ice Blocks through the deck. That's a hint that his game plan is a little bit longer, that Pyroblast is probably in that deck list, so you're very mindful of how low you go in this matchup.
Well, fortunately for Dr. J, JD has just been picking up secret after secret.
Well, they don't call it Secret Mage for nothing, Cora.
Yeah, that's the truth. How many do they play? We've got, what, 2 Ice Blocks, 2 Counter Spells, 2 Explosive Runes?
Yeah, I imagine that Renegade is playing a 6 secret package, a little bit higher than the norm, but it makes some sense when you've got the Arcane Intellects, when you've got the Pyroblast in the package.
I wonder if...
Just playing overall kind of a longer game with the deck.
All right,
Dr. J
smart
testing
play.
for the counterspell at that point.
Well played.
Oh. JDRenegade throwing out the emote. Now, I do know one thing about Dr. J. He hates emoting. He doesn't even like greetings from his opponent when they get into the game, so he's not going to be happy about that.
That's kind of how it is for professionals. You're tuned into the game. You're figuring out exactly what the best plays are, and then, the opponents kind of get in your head every now and then.
Yeah. Professionals are certainly not immune to tilt.
Yeah, Dr. J has made it to the Void Lord, which means now we'll be pressuring with 9 damage a turn, so maybe only 3 or 4 more turns until the first Ice Block is popped, and a little bit more time to go from there on with the second Ice Block in hand. I think another one remaining in the deck as well.
If I were Dr. J, though, I would be so afraid right now that that card in hand is Pyroblast. You need to just kind of be assuming the worst at all times. So I think that with this Fireball to the face, we're definitely going to be seeing that Spellstone come out this turn. But even still, that's still only active for 3 damage, right?
Yeah, I think Dr. J is very worried about what that Primordial Glyph card was. Because Renegade there only, I believe, had 9 mana going to his 9 mana turn. So he could go Fireball, Ping, fit in the Ping there, and it could still be Pyroblast for 8 mana, Ping again the following turn. Just getting in the extra chip damage there with the Ping effect.
Well, no Dark Pact yet for Dr. J. He's still got 1 Mistress of Mixtures left, I believe.
I mean, this is definitely a turn for Dr. J to kind of throw in the Lesser Spellstone, try to get a little bit of healing in here. It's not enough to play around Pyroblast, but it's just fingers kind of crossed at this point.
All right, testing for that counterspell again. Dr. J's order has been pretty good so far.
Maybe one of the downsides is that we're still within Fireball range, which Renegade does have a natural 1 remaining in his deck. Arcane Intellect, a very welcome draw on Renegade's side. Kirin Mages.
Those are 2 dead draws right now. And you see JDRenegade kind of shake his head a little bit. He's picked up all the secrets at this point. Nothing to use this Kirin Mage with 3 Void Lords on the board, so they're not getting to face anytime soon.
And Dr. J here able to pop the first Ice Block, which means Renegade is on a bit of a clock here. We don't know exactly what is in Renegade's list, but if it includes 2 times Firelands Portal, 2 times Fireball, and Pyroblast, I mean, the deck is getting pretty thin at this point.
Yeah, it is. Plus, you still have that Alaneth in the deck, which would pretty much just be a win at this point. Dr. J cannot life tap, otherwise Medivh's Valet and Frostbolt alongside the Hero Power are then lethal. Firelands Portal would do it at this point. Oh man. It's probably better to ask what draws off the top of the deck won't kill Dr. J right now. Well, that's one of them.
Yeah, another minion, another blank, and Renegade does have another Ice Block to stall out an additional turn here.
I wonder at what point Dr. J will just have to kind of go all in on life tap on the Librarian and try to find that Dark Pact as a last resort.
Yeah, JD's window is definitely closing at this point, but I believe the deck has 4 or 5 outs for him. These top deck situations are so tense when it comes to Burn Mage because you know Renegade has plenty of outs remaining, and Dr. J without any healing left. Even something like Gul'dan it plays around most things, but Pyroblast would still be an out at this point.
Yeah, you've got Pyroblast, double Firelands Portal, 1 Fireball, and then Alaneth, I suppose, as well. So 5 cards at the very least in deck for JDRenegade. But there's the Dark Pact for Dr. J off the top. Okay, that's going to put him at 13, put him out of range of any single burn spell being able to get the job done. That's exactly what he wanted right now.
Yeah, that should seal it up for Dr. J. And Renegade coming so close this game. I don't really see any outs remaining for him here.
Well, he could... No.
It'd have to be intellect into something. Intellect into like Frostbolt.
He would have even whiffed off the top again. Having so much of that burn so far into the deck for JDRenegade means that he just could not find the necessary damage this time. And that's even with a really solid start. He had Mana Worm on 1, Arcanologist on 2.
Aggressive deck with only 2 1-drops. So how aggressive can you really be? You're either going to hit that and just have it in fantastic time, or you're going to falter a little bit. A lot of Burn Mage is just assembling 2-card combinations throughout the game, getting the Kirin, getting the Secret, trying to develop tempo that way. But a lot of the time, you don't have those pieces in conjunction, and your whole plan just kind of falls apart.
Very high risk, high reward. You can have those explosive starts, land Alaneth on 6, and then you have an abundance of resources, but sometimes the well just runs dry, and you see turns like we had from JDRenegade in the last game. So he's definitely going to be needing to avoid that this time around. The Raza Priest for Dr. J doesn't have as much healing as the Control Warlock, But, of course, you have that lesser heal hero power over the course of several turns. Is some incremental healing here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the Priest hero power here, although it's pretty bad in most matchups, actually is a pretty key deciding factor. Priest is great at removing the board, getting rid of the chip damage, and at that point, you heal an extra 2 a turn is not too
I
bad.
hope you like my invention.
Fortunately for Dr. J, JDRenegade has missed that turn 1, doesn't find a minion to play on 2, so he's going to have to just coin the Arcane Intellect. Desperately needing to find the Kirin Tor mages, the Cabal lackeys, so there at least is some way to start getting this secret engine online.
Yeah, healing for 2 a turn when it's free is also a very welcome draw here.
Yeah, it
Raza
is.
coming out on 5 can make a huge impact in this game. Renegade is going to go ahead and lead with the explosive runes. It's a card that has the most impact at the start of the game, by far. And I like to see that Renegade is very aware of this, taking his time to go for, you know, as much tempo as he can. It's going to play around something like the 3/6 coming out the following turn.
I think that was the time I've most wanted to see a player pick Glacial Mysteries. I'm not going to lie. 6-mana Glacial Mysteries here wouldn't have been too bad, but it's still never going to be better than a Frostbolt. Unfortunately.
Yeah, and a free Frostbolt is always very nice. A 3 sneaky extra damage can be saved for later on in the game as well.
Yeah, your opponent thinks that they're out of range at 12 health for, you know, the only card remaining being Pyroblast, and suddenly, wham bam, Frostbolt, you're dead.
Renegade decided to use it on the Radiant Elemental after all, stopping Dr. J's ability to cheapen his spells here.
Surrender your
The Explosive Rune is going to take out that Raza right away, meaning that JDRenegade is going to be able to keep pressuring with the Cabal Crystal Runner a little bit here. Start to get some damage through to face.
An incredible discovery.
Yeah, another Explosive Runes means that JD will be able to take out the next minion that Dr. J plays as well. So Dr. J is forced into a position where he has to play extremely defensively, and that the question that JDRenegade is asking is just how much removal do you have?
And at the same time, Dr. J could think that that's counterspell, so any turn he wants to play a spell, he's going to have to test with another spell initially. Fortunately, he does have the Silence in hand to make some decent use out of that, but he's now facing down all of this pressure. He has to consistently play around all of these secrets in the correct order. This is tough.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think overall, just having one massive removal like Psychic Scream isn't going to be enough. A lot of the time, the Burn Mage just doesn't really develop more than 2 minions on board at a time.
No way to get rid of that Cabal Crystal Runner.
Yeah, and Dr. J deciding this turn he doesn't need to develop something like Aknai onto the board. Instead, going for a much more defensive line, getting the heal in, making sure Aknai doesn't get in his way of that. Here, Renegade has actually picked up a lot of burn damage.
And there's an additional 5-mana Firelands portal. Okay, he might just even be able to start throwing this burn to face and hoping that he can close out the game in the course of 3 turns.
Yeah, I think JDRenegade has picked up on that already, throwing out the Fireball this turn.
Glimmerroot could find Ice Block.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's such an awkward turn for Dr. J. Do you really want to Psychic Scream just 1 minion at this point?
I guess he feels he has no other choice.
I think I would have given him a Novice Engineer.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah, it's just 2 mana as a cantrip. It just forces your opponent to use more mana to draw their cards there.
That's true.
We have many secrets.
Fireball to the face.
Renegade holding on to the Firelands portal. It's nice that you're concealing a bit of burn damage here, but getting the Firelands minion just puts out another threat that Dr. J would have to deal with as well.
That's true, but If Dr. J has picked up that Shadow Word Death, for instance, you don't want to play Firelands Portal and get that corrupted heal bot.
Yeah, absolutely not. That's true.
And Dr. J is going to go for a last-ditch effort here. He finds the Greater Healing Potion, but he can't play it this turn. Oh, no.
Yeah, and Dr. J is in full survival mode here. Probably going to go with Northshire, Lashes, and an extra heal, putting him back up to 12.
Firelands plus Frostbolt is 8, plus the Kirin Tor on board is 12.
That is such a disappointment as well. You have
Double
these two
greater-
greater heals in hand. Not quite enough mana to pull it off, though.
Lyra did her absolute best here, and it just isn't good enough. One turn off, but JDRenegade on his third try with this mage deck. Third time's a charm, and he is going to pick up the win. He's going to pick up the series. JDRenegade, our amateur walk-on player who made it through the amateur bracket yesterday, is going to take down the America's